Ambassador Velthari stood on the bridge of the Concatenate flagship, her 4 eyes fixed on the small blue planet rotating slowly on the main display. Earth, the third planet from an unremarkable, yellow star in a distant spiral arm of the galaxy. For 3 months, her delegation had been waiting here, and for 3 months, they had received nothing but silence. "Try again," she told her communications officer. Though she already knew what the response would be, the officer's tentacles danced across the console. "Broadcasting on all known frequencies, Ambassador. Standard greeting protocols in 700 languages. Offering cultural exchange, technological partnership, and full council membership." He paused, his skin shifting to a pale blue that indicated confusion. Still no response. Velthari's secondary arms crossed beneath her primary ones, a gesture of deep thought among her people. In her 400 years of diplomatic service, she had brought 23 species into the council. Some had been eager, practically begging to join the galactic community. Others had been cautious, requiring years of careful negotiation. A few had been hostile at first, needing proof that the council came in peace. But never, not once, had she encountered complete silence. The humans had radio technology. Their signals had been bleeding into space for over 200 years, which is how the council had found them in the first place. The planet below had cities, satellites, space stations, and even a few primitive fusion-powered vessels exploring their own solar system. They were clearly intelligent, clearly technological, and clearly aware that they were not alone in the universe. So why wouldn't they answer? "Ambassador," her military advisor, Commander Thrace, approached from the tactical station. His species, the Kovathi, were tall and covered in metallic scales that reflected the bridge lights. "I must again recommend that we withdraw." This silence could be preparation for an attack. Velthari made a gesture of dismissal. "They are barely capable of leaving their own planet, Commander. We have nothing to fear from them militarily." "Perhaps," Thrace said, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "But they have noticed us. Our sensors detected their telescopes tracking our position. Their satellites have repositioned to observe us. They know we are here, Ambassador. They are choosing not to respond." That was what troubled Velthari most. Choosing not to respond meant deliberate action, which meant intent, which meant policy. But what kind of policy involved ignoring first contact with an advanced alien civilization? The communications officer suddenly straightened. "Ambassador, we have movement. A human vessel is leaving Earth's orbital space." Everyone on the bridge turned to watch. A small ship, barely larger than a shuttle, accelerated away from Earth's moon. It was primitive by council standards, powered by fusion engines that left a bright plasma trail. But it was moving fast, faster than most human vessels they had observed. "Is it coming toward us?" Velthari asked. "No, Ambassador, it's heading out system toward the asteroid belt." Velthari watched the ship disappear from visual range. "Follow it. Maintain a respectful distance." For 6 days, they followed the human vessel as it traveled deeper into the solar system. The humans never acknowledged their presence, never changed course, never attempted communication. They simply continued on their journey as if the massive alien starship following them did not exist. The human ship finally stopped at a large metallic asteroid. Small figures in pressure suits emerged and began setting up equipment on the surface. Mining operations, Velthari realized. They were extracting raw materials. "Send a shuttle," she ordered. "I will make contact personally." Commander Thrace objected immediately. "Ambassador, that is unwise. We do not know their intentions." "We will never know their intentions if we remain in orbit," Velthari replied. "Prepare the shuttle." An hour later, Velthari's shuttle descended toward the asteroid's surface. The human miners noticed immediately. She could see them gathering, pointing at the approaching craft. But they did not flee, did not raise weapons, did not signal for help. They simply watched the shuttle landed softly on the asteroid's surface. Velthari emerged, her environmental suit adjusted for the low gravity. 3 humans approached, moving carefully in their bulky suits. Through her translator, she could hear them speaking to each other, but the words were garbled, the syntax unfamiliar. The translator needed more data to process their language properly. She raised her primary arms in the universal gesture of peace and activated her suit's external speakers. The translator would do its best. Greetings. I am Ambassador Valfari of the Galactic Council. We come in peace and friendship. We wish to establish diplomatic relations with your species. The humans looked at each other. Then one of them, wearing a suit with red markings, stepped forward. He said something, and this time the translator caught enough words to make sense of it. We see you. Thank you for visiting. Please be safe. Then the human turned around and walked back to his work. Valthari stood frozen. That was it? Thank you for visiting? She tried again. Please, we have much to offer your species. Technology, knowledge, protection from hostile forces. The Council represents 40,000 years of accumulated wisdom from 800 member species. The human with red markings turned back. Even through the helmet, Valthari could see his face. He looked tired, but not unfriendly. He said something else, and the translator worked faster this time. That is good. We are happy for you. We have work to do. Safe travels? And then all three humans returned to their mining equipment. Leaving Valthari standing alone on the asteroid's surface, she returned to the flagship confused and frustrated. Over the following weeks, her delegation tried everything. They sent gifts to Earth, carefully selected to demonstrate Council goodwill and advanced technology. The gifts were accepted politely, but never acknowledged beyond a simple receipt confirmation. They broadcast educational programs about the Council, its history, its benefits. The broadcasts were received but never answered. They even tried sending messages to individual human governments, hoping to find one more receptive than the others. Every response was the same, polite, brief, and completely uninterested. Meanwhile, something else began to happen. Human ships started appearing in Council space. Not many at first, just a few exploration vessels, but they came regularly. They would enter a system, spend days or weeks surveying planets and asteroids, taking samples and making observations. When Council vessels approached them, the humans would acknowledge their presence with a simple greeting, then continue working. If asked what they were doing, they would explain, exploring, surveying, learning. If asked if they wanted to join the Council, they would say thank you for the offer and then change the subject. Reports started arriving from all over Council space. Human ships here, human signals there, human bases being constructed on unclaimed moons. They followed all the technical laws about property and territory. They never claimed worlds that belonged to other species. They never entered restricted zones. But they never asked permission either. They simply showed up and started building. The Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 800 species gathered to discuss the human problem. Because that was what humanity had become in just a few short months. A problem, not a threat exactly, not an enemy. But something that did not fit into any category the Council understood. They are ignoring us, Senior Counselor Math declared, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. In 40,000 years of Council history, no species has simply ignored us. Perhaps they do not understand what we are offering, suggested Counselor Epheme, her wings rustling with agitation. They understand, Valthari said quietly. I saw it in their faces. They simply do not care? The chamber fell silent. Not caring was somehow worse than hostility. Hostility could be negotiated. Indifference could not. What do they want? Someone asked. Valthari looked at the star map showing human expansion. In just 3 months, humans had established presence in 47 systems. They were spreading faster than any species in recorded history. I do not know, she admitted, but I intend to find out. 10 years had passed since first contact, and the Galactic Council was no closer to understanding humanity. Valthari sat in her office reviewing the latest reports, and each one made less sense than the last. Human colonies now existed on 217 worlds. The expansion was staggering. Most species took centuries to establish even a dozen colonies. The Cravathi, known for their aggressive expansion, had only settled 40 worlds in their first century of space travel. Yet humans were spreading across the galaxy like water flowing downhill. seeking every available space, but they were not conquering. That was the strange part. They simply arrived at unclaimed worlds, landed their ships, and started building. They terraformed when necessary, adapted when possible, and always followed the Council's territorial laws. They never touched claimed worlds, never encroached on protected zones, never violated any treaty they had never signed. "Computer, show me the pattern analysis," Velthari commanded. A three-dimensional map appeared above her desk. Human colonies glowed in blue, council member worlds in green, and independent stations in yellow. The blue dots were spreading, but not randomly. They formed clusters, networks, chains of settlements that seemed to follow resources and habitable zones, but something else caught her attention. Wherever humans settled, trade increased. Not just human trade, but trade between all species in the region. Human colonies became hubs of commerce, attracting merchants from dozens of species. They bought and sold fairly, paid in raw materials or finished goods, and never used council currency. That was another puzzle. The council credit was the universal standard, accepted everywhere, backed by the combined economies of 800 species. Yet humans traded everything in barter or in strange precious metals they dug from asteroids. Gold, silver, platinum, rare earth elements. They valued physical goods over digital currency, which made no sense for a spacefaring civilization. A chime interrupted her thoughts. "Ambassador," her assistant's voice came through the communicator. "You have a visitor. Dr. Yenna from the Xenopsychology Institute. Send her in." Dr. Yenna entered, carrying a data tablet and looking exhausted. Her species, the Trilaxians, were known for their analytical minds and their 3 brains, which allowed them to process information faster than most other species. If anyone could understand humans, it should be her. "Doctor," Velthari greeted her. "Please tell me you have good news." Yenna's middle eye blinked rapidly, a sign of stress. "I have news, Ambassador. Whether it is good remains to be seen." She activated her tablet, projecting images into the air between them. "We have been observing human colonies for the past decade. We have analyzed their communication patterns, their social structures, their economic systems, and we have discovered something extraordinary." Velthari leaned forward. "Go on. Humans have no central government." The ambassador stared at her. "That is impossible. They have space travel, organized colonies, trade networks. These things require coordination, planning, central authority." "Yes," Yenna agreed. "By every model we have, it should be impossible. Yet it is true. Earth itself is divided into more than 200 separate governmental units, each with its own laws and customs. Their colonies are the same. Each one is independent, making its own decisions. Some are democracies, some are corporate ventures, some are religious communities, some we cannot even classify." Velthari felt a headache forming behind her eyes. "But they coordinate. We have seen human fleets working together, colonies supporting each other." "They negotiate," Yenna said. "Constantly. Every interaction requires agreement. Every trade requires a contract. Every joint venture requires consensus. It is exhausting to watch, frankly. But it works for them. How is that efficient?" Yenna's middle eye blinked again. "It is not. By our standards, it is incredibly inefficient. But humans do not seem to value efficiency the way we do. They value something else. Autonomy, they call it. The right of each community to govern itself." Velthari absorbed this information. It explained some things but raised more questions. "So when we offer them council membership, we are asking them to surrender their autonomy to a central authority?" "Essentially, yes. And from their perspective, that is not an attractive offer. They already have what they want: freedom to expand, freedom to trade, freedom to govern themselves. What could the council offer that they do not already have?" "Protection," Velthari said immediately. "Technology, knowledge, access to council markets." "They protect themselves quite well," Yenna countered. "Their defensive systems are primitive but effective. As for technology, they seem to be advancing on their own rapidly." "And council markets?" She made a gesture of uncertainty. They are already trading with anyone who wants to trade with them. They do not need council permission for that. Velthari stood and walked to her window, looking out at the stars. So we have nothing they want. Perhaps, Yenna said carefully. Or perhaps we are thinking about this wrong. We assume all species want the same things we want: stability, order, unified purpose. What if humans want something different? Before Velthari could respond, an alert flashed on her console. She checked it and felt her heart sink. There has been an incident. She pulled up the report. A human colony on the frontier had been attacked by pirates. The Razgor Syndicate, a criminal organization that had plagued council space for decades. They had mistaken the human colony for an easy target. Small, new, lightly defended, the Razgor had learned a painful lesson. The report included footage from the attack. Velthari watched as pirate ships descended on the human settlement. The humans had only 3 defensive satellites and 1 small patrol ship. By all logic, they should have been overwhelmed in minutes. Instead, the humans had fought with terrifying ferocity. The defensive satellites unleashed weapons that tore through pirate shields like they were not there. The patrol ship, laughably small compared to pirate cruisers, had somehow destroyed 2 of them before taking a hit. Even after the ship was damaged, its crew had continued fighting, using the wreckage as a battering ram against another pirate vessel. On the ground, human colonists had emerged with personal weapons. Rifles, grenades, even primitive chemical explosives. They had fought building to building, refusing to surrender even when outnumbered. The pirates had eventually retreated, having suffered 70% casualties for 0 gain. By the ancestors, Velthari whispered. They fight like cornered predators? Perhaps because they are predators, Yenna said softly. We scanned their homeworld, remember? Humans evolved as pursuit hunters. They are one of the only species in the galaxy that developed intelligence primarily for hunting rather than hiding. Velthari watched the footage again. After the pirates fled, the humans did not celebrate. They tended their wounded, repaired their defenses, and went back to work. Like the attack was simply another problem to solve? No different from crop failure or equipment malfunction. More reports came in over the following days. The human colony had refused council offers of military protection. They had instead purchased more weapons from independent arms dealers and built more defensive satellites. Word spread quickly through pirate channels. Human colonies were not worth the cost. They looked soft, but fought hard, but more interesting was what happened next. 3 other human colonies had sent ships with supplies, weapons, and volunteers to help the attack settlement. Not because any government ordered them to. Not because they expected payment. Simply because those colonies were also human, and humans apparently believed in helping each other. They have no central government, Velthari said, thinking out loud. No unified military. No coordinated defense force. Yet they defend each other anyway. Tribal loyalty, Yenna suggested. Humans group themselves in many ways, by colony, by nation of origin, by language, by religion, by shared interests. But they all recognize other humans as part of their larger tribe. So they unite against external threats, but refuse to unify under a single authority? It appears so. Velthari felt the headache growing worse. Humanity was a paradox wrapped in a contradiction. Strong but divided. Independent but cooperative. Primitive but advancing rapidly. And completely, utterly uninterested in the Galactic Council, she looked at the star map again, watching the blue dots multiply. In 10 years, humans had accomplished what most species needed a century to achieve. And they had done it without anyone's permission, without anyone's help, without anyone's guidance. What if we cannot stop them? She asked quietly. Yenna did not answer immediately. When she did, her voice was uncertain. Then the galaxy will change. Perhaps more than we can imagine. Velthari closed her eyes. Change was coming. She could feel it like a storm on the horizon. The only question was whether the council would adapt or be swept away. The council chamber was in chaos. 800 species, each represented by their finest diplomats, were shouting over each other in dozens of languages. The translator system was struggling to keep up, creating a cacophony of overlapping voices that echoed off the ancient stone walls. Senior Counselor. Mrath struck his staff against the floor, the sound booming through the chamber like thunder. Order! We will have order. Slowly the voices quieted. Mrath was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. He had served the council for 600 years and had never seen it so divided. The human question must be resolved, he declared. For 20 years they have ignored our overtures. For 20 years they have expanded without permission. For 20 years they have treated council law as optional. This cannot continue. Counselor Ephraim stood, her wings spreading wide. What exactly have they violated? They claim no inhabited worlds. They respect territorial boundaries. They engage in fair trade. By the letter of council law, they have broken no rules. They mock us with their silence. Someone shouted from the back. Or they simply do not care about us, another voice responded, which is perhaps more insulting. Mrath struck his staff again, which is why we are bringing in Mediator Koth. If anyone can make the humans see reason, it is him. A murmur ran through the chamber. Koth was legendary. He had brought the warlike Korvathi into the council. He had convinced the isolationist Vayanara to join. He had even mediated the peace between the Trilaxians and the Zorthek after a 300-year war. 37 species owed their council membership to his patient. Brilliant negotiation. If Koth could not reach the humans, no one could 3 weeks later. Mediator Koth arrived at Earth. He was impressive to look at, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with crystalline skin that reflected light in rainbow patterns. His species, the Kalthari, were natural empaths able to sense the emotional states of other beings. It made them exceptional diplomats. Koth did not make the same mistakes as Valthari. He did not wait in orbit hoping for a response. He sent a message directly to the largest human government requesting a meeting. To everyone's surprise, the humans agreed. The meeting took place in a building called the United Nations. In a city called New York, Koth arrived with a small delegation and was greeted by human diplomats in formal attire. They were polite, professional, and surprisingly well prepared. The chief human diplomat was a woman named Secretary Amari. She was elderly by human standards, with gray hair and deep lines around her eyes. But those eyes were sharp, missing nothing. Mediator Koth, she said, extending her hand in the human greeting. Welcome to Earth. We are honored by your visit. Koth shook her hand gently, aware of how fragile humans were compared to his own species. Secretary Amari, thank you for agreeing to meet. I must admit, I expected more resistance. Amari smiled. We are not hostile, Mediator. Merely busy. Please sit. Would you like refreshments? We have synthesized foods that should be compatible with your biology. They sat across from each other at a large wooden table. Koth noticed the wood immediately. Real organic matter, not synthesized material. Humans used natural resources even when more efficient alternatives existed. Curious. Secretary Amari, Koth began. I will speak plainly. The Galactic Council is confused by your species' behavior. For 20 years, you have ignored our offers of membership. You expand into council space without seeking permission. You trade without using proper channels. Why? Amari folded her hands on the table. Mediator, may I ask you a question first? What does council membership require? Adherence to council law. Participation in council governance. Contribution to council defense and economic systems. Standard requirements for any member species. And in exchange? Protection. Technology sharing. Access to accumulated knowledge. Guaranteed rights and representation in council decisions. Amari nodded slowly. I see, and these council laws that we would need to follow. Do they include allowing council oversight of our government? Of course. All member species submit to council authority on matters of galactic importance. What defines galactic importance? Koth felt the first twinge of unease. The council defines it through democratic vote among member species. So we would surrender our sovereignty to a body of 800 species. most of whom we have never met, who would vote on matters affecting our lives. When she put it that way, it did sound less appealing. That is how civilization functions, Secretary. Individual desires must sometimes be subordinated to the greater good. The greater good as defined by the majority? Yes, Amari stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Mediator Koth, do you know how many wars humanity has fought over exactly that principle? How many people have died because someone else decided what was good for them? Koth's empathic sense was picking up something from Amari, not hostility. Not fear? Something else? Weariness? Old pain? War is common among developing species, he said carefully. It is one reason council membership is beneficial. We maintain peace. You maintain your peace, Amari corrected gently. Your way of doing things, which may work wonderfully for you. But it is not our way. Then what is your way? Amari turned back to face him. We just started figuring that out. For most of our history, we tried centralization. Empires, kingdoms, world governments. Every time it ended badly. Too much power in too few hands. Too many people with no say in their own lives. We nearly destroyed ourselves. She paused. 50 years ago, we agreed to try something different. Radical autonomy. Every nation, every colony, every community governs itself. We cooperate when we want to. We trade when it benefits us. But no one rules over anyone else. That is chaos, Koth said. It is freedom, Amari replied. Messy, complicated, inefficient freedom? But it is ours. Koth tried a different approach. What about protection? The galaxy has dangers. Pirates, hostile species, cosmic events. The Council can shield you from these threats. We can shield ourselves. You are one species against a galaxy of thousands. Amari's smile was not unkind. Mediator, my people evolved by walking down prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We survived ice ages, plagues, disasters that killed 90% of our population. We are very good at surviving. We do not need anyone to protect us. Koth felt his carefully prepared arguments crumbling. He tried another angle. Technology, then. We can offer advances that would take you centuries to develop on your own. We appreciate the offer, but we will develop our own technology in our own time. Anything given to us would create dependence. We would rather struggle and learn than be handed easy answers. That is pride speaking. Perhaps, Amari agreed. But it is our pride. Our choice. Koth stood, his crystalline skin shifting colors in frustration. Secretary Amari, I do not think you understand. The Council has rules, order, structure. You cannot simply ignore it and do whatever you want. Why not? Amari asked simply, what will you do? Force us to join? That would violate your own principles of peaceful diplomacy. Quarantine us? We are already spreading too far for that. Attack us? She shook her head. You could, of course. You have superior military force. But then you would be conquerors, not protectors. And I do not think that is what the Council wants to. Koth felt his empathic sense overwhelmed by his own. Emotions, frustration, confusion, and something he rarely felt, helplessness. What do you want from us? He asked finally. To be left alone, Amari said. We will be good neighbors. We will trade fairly. We will help species in need. We will follow the spirit of galactic law. But we will not join your council. We will not submit to your authority. We will not ask for permission to exist. The council will not accept this. That is the council's problem, not ours. Amari's expression softened. Mediator Koth, I mean no disrespect. Your civilization is ancient and impressive, but it is not for us. We are young, foolish, and stubborn. We make mistakes. We learn slowly, but we learn. And we will not give up our freedom, not even for the promise of safety and prosperity. Koth left Earth that day without the agreement he came for. As his ship departed, he watched the planet shrink behind him. His last sight was of human colony ships launching, heading for new worlds, Carrying their messy freedom with them, he sent his report to the council. It was not the report they wanted. He had failed. For the first time in his long career, he had completely, utterly failed. But more than that, he had discovered something that shook him deeply. The humans were not wrong. They were simply different. And the council had no idea how to deal with different. The council was breaking apart from the inside, and everyone knew it. It started small. A frontier species called the Kelleran quietly opened trade negotiations with a human colony. Nothing official, nothing reported to the council. Just merchants meeting merchants, exchanging goods without council oversight. The Kelleran had always followed council rules. They were a young species, barely 1,000 years into space travel, grateful for council protection and guidance. But human traders offered better prices for their raw materials and asked fewer questions about how the Kelleran wanted to govern themselves. Word spread. Other frontier species noticed. If the Kelleran could trade with humans and benefit, why could they not do the same? Council Enforcement Directorate sent Inspector Vex to investigate. Vex was a Korvathi, all hard scales and harder principles. He believed in order, in rules, in the council way. He arrived at Kelleran Prime, expecting to find violations and lawbreakers. What he found instead confused him. The Kelleran Trade Minister was a young female named Tyreses. She greeted Vex in her office, surrounded by star charts showing trade routes between Kelleran worlds and human colonies. "Inspector Vex," she said, "how may I help you?" "You can start by explaining these unauthorized trade agreements," Vex said, his voice sharp. "Council law requires all interspecies trade to be registered and approved. You have broken protocol." Tyreses blinked her large eyes. "Have we? I was not aware that the humans were council members requiring such protocols." Vex felt his scales heat with irritation. "They are not members. That is precisely the problem. Trade with non-council species must be carefully monitored to ensure compliance with standards." "What standards have we violated?" "We trade raw minerals for manufactured goods and agricultural products. Fair prices, mutual benefit. No one is harmed. The humans could be dangerous. They could be exploiting you." Tyreses made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Inspector, the humans pay us 30% more for our copper than council traders do. They deliver goods faster. They ask for no political concessions. How exactly are they exploiting us?" Vex had no good answer. He tried another approach. "It is about principle, about maintaining council unity. If every species starts trading independently, the whole system falls apart." "Perhaps the system needs to fall apart," Tyreses said quietly. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Vex stared at her. "You are speaking of rebellion." "I am speaking of questioning," Tyreses corrected. "Inspector, my people joined the council 300 years ago. We were told it would bring prosperity and protection. And it has, to some extent. But we also gave up much. The right to negotiate our own treaties. The right to set our own trade policies. The right to make mistakes and learn from them. We have been children for 3 centuries, dependent on council wisdom. When do we get to grow up? The council integration process takes time. 500 years on average. It ensures stability. It ensures control," Tyreses said. "The humans have been spacefaring for barely a century, and they have already surpassed us in expansion and innovation. Why? Because they make their own decisions. They fail, they learn, they adapt. We ask permission for everything and wonder why we stagnate." Vex left Kelleran Prime without filing any charges. What could he charge them with? Following council law while questioning council philosophy? He sent his report, flagging the situation as concerning but not criminal. His report landed on Velfari's desk like all the others. She had been collecting these reports for months. The Kelleran were not alone. 17 other frontier species were trading with humans. 8 core species were questioning council expansion policies. 3 senior council members had submitted proposals to reform integration procedures. The humans were not attacking the council. They were not even trying to undermine it. They were simply existing as an alternative. And that alternative looked increasingly attractive to species who felt constrained by Council rules. Ambassador Velthari called an emergency meeting of the Council's inner circle. 12 senior diplomats gathered in a secure chamber away from the main Council floor. These were the real power brokers, the ones who had guided Council policy for generations. "We are losing control," Councillor Ephraim said bluntly. "Species are looking at human success and asking why they cannot have the same freedom." "Because freedom without structure leads to chaos," growled Councillor Mrath. "We have 40,000 years of history proving this. Strong central authority maintains peace, does it?" asked a new voice. Councillor Zell, a young representative who had recently joined the inner circle. "Or does it maintain compliance?" "There is a difference." Mrath's eyes narrowed. "You sound like a human sympathizer." "I am a realist," Zell replied. "The humans are expanding faster than any species in our history. They are innovating constantly. They are happy. Their colonies are thriving. Meanwhile, our member species are bound by regulations that take decades to change. Who would not be attracted to the human model?" "The human model is anarchy," Mrath insisted. 200 independent governments on one planet. Thousands of autonomous colonies. No central command. It cannot last. "It has lasted for 50 years and shows no signs of failing," Velthari said quietly. "Perhaps it is time we admit that our model is not the only viable one." The room erupted. Half the council members agreed. Half vehemently objected. The argument raged for hours, cycling through the same points again and again. Control versus freedom? Stability versus innovation? Tradition versus change? Finally, Councillor Mrath raised his voice above the others. "Enough, we will put this to a vote on the main council floor. The question is simple. Do we force the humans to comply with council authority, or do we allow them to continue as they are?" "And how exactly do we force them?" Zell asked. "Military action? If necessary." "That would be a declaration of war against a species that has never attacked us," Ephraim pointed out. "Many council members would oppose such action." "Then we quarantine them," Mrath said. "Seal them in their current territory. Prohibit all trade with them. Eventually they will see reason. Or they will bypass the quarantine," Velthari said. "Inspector Vex's reports show human ships can reach places our patrols cannot. They are smaller, faster, more adaptable. We cannot contain them without dedicating enormous resources to the effort. So we do nothing?" Mrath demanded. "We simply accept that they will continue to undermine council authority." "They are not trying to undermine us," Velthari said. "They are simply ignoring us." "There is a difference." The debate moved to the main council floor the following week. For 3 days, 800 species argued about the human question. Some wanted war. Some wanted quarantine. Some wanted negotiation. Some wanted to simply leave the humans alone and focus on internal council matters. A small but growing group suggested something radical, learning from the humans. Perhaps the council could reform its integration process. Perhaps member species could have more autonomy. Perhaps centralized control was not the only path to galactic civilization. These suggestions were shouted down by traditionalists, but the seeds were planted. Council members went home and discussed the ideas with their governments. Frontier species looked at human colonies and wondered why they could not govern themselves the same way. Young species questioned whether 500 years of integration was really necessary. The vote, when it finally came, was split 3 ways. War received 20% support. Quarantine received 30%. And 50% voted for a new option, recognition of humans as independent but cooperative entities. Not council members, but also not enemies. Something in between. It was the first time in council history that a 3-way split had occurred on a major policy decision. It was also the first time the council had officially recognized a species outside its authority structure. Mrath was furious. "This is the beginning of the end," he proclaimed. "We have just admitted that council authority is optional. Every species will now question whether they need us. Perhaps that is not a bad thing, Zell said quietly. Perhaps it is time we proved our value rather than assumed it. Velthari watched the council chamber empty after the vote. Some members left angry. Some left relieved. Some left confused. But they all left changed. The galaxy would never be quite the same. She pulled up the star map one more time. Human colonies glowed in blue. 583 worlds now. In 30 years, they had built an empire without ever calling it one. They had changed the galaxy without ever trying to conquer it, and the council, ancient and powerful, was learning an uncomfortable lesson. Authority only matters if people accept it. Force compliance and you create resentment. Demand loyalty and you inspire rebellion, but offer respect and cooperation as equals. That, the humans seemed to be saying, was worth something. Velthari closed the star map and began drafting a new communication to humanity. Not an offer of membership. Not a demand for compliance. Just a simple message. We see you, we acknowledge you. We are willing to work with you. Whether the humans would respond remained to be seen. But for the first time in 30 years, Velthari felt like she was asking the right question instead of demanding the wrong answer. Ambassador Velthari stood before the council one last time, but now she stood as something different. Not as their representative, not as their diplomat, as a witness. I resign my position, she said simply, effective immediately. The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. In 40,000 years of history, no ambassador had ever resigned their post. The position was for life, a sacred duty passed down through generations. To abandon it was unthinkable. Senior Counselor Mrath rose, his ancient face twisted in confusion and anger. Ambassador Velthari, what is the meaning of this? Have you lost your mind? No, Counselor, I have found it. She placed her credentials on the podium before her. For 35 years, I have tried to understand humanity. I have observed them. From orbit, sent them messages, studied their patterns. I have learned nothing except that I was asking the wrong questions, so I have decided to do something different. I am going to live with them. That is madness, Mrath declared. You would abandon your duty, your honor, your people? I would seek truth, Velthari replied. And I cannot find it here. She left the council chamber to silence. No one stopped her. No one knew what to say. She returned to her quarters, packed a small bag, and booked passage on a human merchant vessel called the Wandering Star, the ship's. Captain was a human named Marcus Chun, weathered and gray-haired, with laugh lines around his eyes. He looked at Velthari's credentials and whistled low. A council ambassador on my ship? That is either a great honor or a great problem. Neither, Velthari said. I am simply a passenger. I want to see how humans live. Chun shrugged. Your money is as good as anyone's. Welcome aboard. We have got a 6-month route ahead of us, hitting 12 human colonies and a few independent stations. You will see plenty of human life. The Wandering Star was nothing like council vessels. It was cramped, loud, and smelled of recycled air and cooking food. The crew was small, just 8 humans, but they worked together with easy efficiency. They argued constantly, laughed often, and treated Velthari with friendly curiosity rather than formal respect. Why did you leave the council? Asked Naria, the ship's engineer. She was young, barely 30, with grease permanently under her fingernails. To understand, Velthari said. Your people confuse us. You ignore us, yet you are not hostile. You expand without permission, yet you follow our laws. You refuse unity, yet you cooperate. Nothing you do makes sense to us, Maria laughed. Nothing we do makes sense to us either. That is kind of our thing. We just keep trying stuff until something works. They reached their first stop 3 weeks later. A colony called New Haven, built on a planet that was barely habitable. The atmosphere was thin, the water was scarce, and the native plant life was toxic to human biology. By council standards, the planet should have been quarantined as unsuitable, but 2,000 humans live there. Anyway, Velthari walked through New Haven's main settlement with Captain Chun. The buildings were a mix of advanced technology and primitive construction. Atmospheric processors hummed next to buildings made of local stone. Solar panels covered roofs made of woven plant fiber. Gardens grew under protective domes, tended by hand. "Why here?" Valthari asked. "There are easier worlds. Worlds with better air, better water, better everything." Shun pointed to a family working in one of the gardens. 2 adults and 3 children, carefully transplanting seedlings. "They are from Indonesia." Back on Earth, their ancestors were fishermen who became farmers who became city workers. When they heard about New Haven, they saw a chance to go back to farming, to live simply, to work with their hands, so they came. "But the conditions are terrible." "For now," Chun agreed. "Give them 50 years. They will terraform this place into a paradise. Or they will fail and move somewhere else. Either way, it was their choice." They visited a dozen colonies over the next 6 months. Each one was different. Some were corporate ventures mining asteroids for profit. Some were religious communities seeking isolation to practice their faiths. Some were scientific outposts studying strange phenomena. Some were just groups of people who wanted to start fresh somewhere new. No 2 colonies had the same government. No 2 colonies had the same culture. But they all had something in common: freedom, the freedom to succeed or fail on their own terms. Valthari also noticed something else. Humans helped each other constantly. A colony struggling with food production would receive shipments from a colony with surplus. A colony under pirate attack would see ships from 3 other colonies arrive to help defend it. Not because anyone ordered them to. Not because they expected payment. Simply because they were all human and humans looked out for each other. It was the opposite of the council model. The council maintained peace through law and hierarchy. Humans maintained cooperation through shared identity and mutual interest. Both worked, but in completely different ways. The turning point came on a colony called Freedom Point. It was one of the oldest human settlements, established 40 years ago, by people fleeing various conflicts on Earth. The colony's governor was an elderly woman named Sarah Okonkwo. Valthari met with her in a small office overlooking the colony's central square. Through the window she could see humans of every type. Different skin colors, different clothing styles, different languages being spoken. Yet they all shared the same space peacefully. "Governor Okonkwo," Valthari said. "May I ask you something personal?" "Of course, Ambassador." "Why do you not want to join the council? We offer protection, resources, knowledge. Why refuse these things?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Let me tell you a story. My grandmother was born in Nigeria, back on Earth. When she was young, her country was colonized by a powerful empire. The empire said they were bringing civilization, progress, better governance, and in some ways, they did. They built roads and schools. But they also told my people how to live, how to govern, what to value. They took away our right to make our own mistakes and learn our own lessons." She looked out at the square. "When my grandmother's country finally won independence, it was messy. There were problems, conflicts, struggles, but it was theirs. They owned their successes and their failures. That ownership, that autonomy, was worth more than all the roads and schools the empire built. You see the council as colonizers?" Valthari asked. "I see the council as well-meaning," Sarah said. "But yes, in a way. You want to tell us how to live because you think you know better. Maybe you do. You have 40,000 years of experience, but that experience is yours, not ours. We need to make our own mistakes. We need to learn our own lessons, even if it costs us. Especially if it costs us." Valthari felt something shift in her understanding. "You are not rejecting civilization. You are rejecting someone else's definition of it." "Exactly," Sarah smiled. "We will build our own civilization. Messy, chaotic, probably inefficient, but ours. And we will cooperate with the council, trade with council species, learn from council knowledge. We just will not let you govern us. We will not surrender the right to determine our own future." Valthari left Freedom Point with more questions than answers, but they were better questions. She spent the remaining months of her journey writing, thinking, analyzing. When the wandering star finally returned to council space, she requested one final appearance before the full council. They granted it. Curious about what she had learned, Valthari stood at the podium and looked out at 800 species. I have lived among the humans for 1 year. I have visited their colonies, spoken with their people, observed their way of life. And I have discovered something that will change how we must think about them. She activated the holographic display. Images of human colonies appeared, showing their diversity and vitality. We have been asking the wrong question. We keep asking why humans will not join us. The real question is, why would they? We offer them things they already have. Protection. They protect themselves. Technology. They develop their own knowledge. They are learning rapidly. Unity. They have their own form of unity, based on shared humanity rather than shared government. Counselor Mrath interrupted. So, you are saying we have nothing to offer them? I was saying we offer them something they do not value more than what they would lose. Humans experienced centuries of centralized world government. It nearly destroyed their species. Multiple times, wars, oppression, environmental collapse. They rebuilt their civilization on a principle of radical autonomy. Every community governs itself. No one surrenders sovereignty to distant authority. That is a recipe for chaos, Mrath objected. By our standards, yes, Valthari agreed. But it works for them. They negotiate constantly. Every interaction requires agreement. It is inefficient, frustrating, and slow. But it ensures that no one community can dominate all the others. It ensures that power remains distributed. It ensures freedom. She paused, letting her words sink in. When we offer humans council membership, we are asking them to give up the thing they value most. We are asking them to trust that we will govern them fairly. But humans have learned not to trust any central authority, no matter how benevolent. They have been burned too many times, so what do you suggest? Asked Counselor Zell. We accept them as they are, Valthari said simply. We stop trying to make them join our system and start learning to work with their system.